You're listening to the Long Game Podcast with Sandra Scaiano. In a world where everyone is doing, it's easy to get lost in a sea of comparison, secret tricks, and promises of overnight success. The long game is my approach to business. The actual day in and day out philosophy that you have to show up, you have to do the work, and there's no quick fixes for long-term success. I'm a web designer, digital strategist, and energetic thinker, and I'm here to share the process and lessons I experience with my clients daily who are going through the same struggles of building a business as you are. We'll hear from successful entrepreneurs sharing their long game strategies, and I'm fun, so we're going to have a little fun along the way too. Thanks for being here. Let's get to today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Long Game Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Scaiano, and this week we're talking about utilizing a VA or virtual assistant. Last week, we talked about how to find your perfect match VA and loosely some of the systems you can build out when you have one. I thought it would be a great follow-up if I went into some detail of how I work with my virtual assistant, Grace. And if you haven't listened to last week's episode with Jen Lehner, you can do so after this. In that episode, we talked about how to find your VA with Jen's process, how to do it now versus when you are way overwhelmed, and how it's more affordable to get help than you think. So my VA is Grace. She's a mom, and I love that we have that in common. And she knows her way around a WordPress site. This part was important to me because I'm a web designer. So in my search, I put in for someone with WordPress skills. Now, I wasn't looking for another web designer, but having WordPress skills showed me that Grace wouldn't be afraid to go in and do the things that were on my list of items that I wanted to delegate. I knew that if she had some base understanding, I could teach her anything else she needed to know. And that's the one thing with tech. Half the battle is getting over the fear of using tech. So with Grace having some WordPress experience, I knew I wouldn't have to conquer that. And I was right. So my first tip for finding your VA is think about what is the main task you want them to do. Seek out skills for that. It sounds simple, but it really causes you to stop and think about your business. Where do you need help the most? What is the direction you're moving in? What skills does this person need to have to handle what you want to delegate? So if I had searched for a VA with social media experience, the roles she would feel comfortable with would be different. And it's not where I needed to build yet for my business. And, really, it's an individual play. It's what you need. With all this WordPress experience, Grace runs my podcast show notes page. She sets up the posts, finds all the links, and optimizes the content. And this is huge for me. I completely released this whole process to her. And Grace is an integral part of producing my podcast as well. I had committed to the idea of starting a podcast about a month and a half into working with Grace. And I guess I should back up here with this story. I knew I needed to grow. So I brought Grace on when certain parts of my business were still a shit show. It was totally before I was ready. And at the time, it was for 20 hours a week, which worked out because Grace had another gig that she worked for too for 20 hours. And that's what she was looking for. So that felt like a good amount of time for me when we started. Like I totally dipped my toe into the water. But 20 hours is nothing to balk at. I spent that time getting Grace introduced to my business, showing her all the tools I use and having her watch some trainings on them. It was unorganized, but I wanted her to know. I wanted her to see all that goes into my business. And really that slow time, that learning time, that paid off. Once I decided to do a podcast, I was able to prep with Grace for her to execute things. And I was already maxed out with my client work and building systems and all the other stuff I had on my plate. So if I was going to add a podcast to my business, the only way I was going to do it was with help. And I put Grace in charge of this. She dug into systems in Trello, ones that we had created, and she completely learned the process for something that she knew nothing about. She also committed to the timeframes, and that's super important. My podcast launches every Wednesday, so we need things done for then and on a schedule. And communication helped there. Like my goal is always ownership of the project. I think people work best when they take ownership and they aren't micromanaged. And Grace encouraged that as well. Like along the way, she would message me, "Any more tasks, boss?" And that showed me how she wanted more. I just had to get my act together to pass things off to her. That's one of the biggest concerns, right? Like, how can someone else do what I do? Or how am I going to stop to train someone to do what I do? Well, you just do. And like I said, it wasn't pretty at the time, but Grace stayed even with the mess. And I just have to share with you how messy it was. Like I set up her pay and I paid her no matter what if I actually gave her tasks for all the hours. That's how much of a mess I was at passing things off. But, she stayed with me while I sorted it out and, continued to find my footing. Next, COVID hit. And on one of our weekly calls, which we had instituted weekly calls to connect, and it's so good because you have FaceTime, and it actually gave me a chance to show her a lot. A lot of times I'll record those calls and I'll show her a process or how I do something, and then she's able to take that recording and build out system docs for us to have as a reference. So on one of our Friday calls, Grace let me know that her other job had cut back and let her go. So there I was again, moving forward before I was ready because I offered her full-time on the spot. It actually just showed up at the right time. The universe was working for me. And from there, I started to build in more ideas for Grace in my business and how she could help me. And, with that, she has taken on helping me create systems for my business. And as we've mentioned before, systems help you scale. So whenever there is something new or a project to tackle, we create a system. We're big on using Trello and creating a checklist in there to keep track. And Grace also has helped me now with my client work, and it's the best. Like I have discovered how skills she has in areas that I'm not skilled in. And so I happily share those tasks with her. If I need something organized on a page or a spreadsheet, she whips that out. We work on creating system docs for my business too, so that when we expand, we have materials to train someone else in these tasks. I create Loom videos of my tasks, and Grace turns those into processes for my business. With this skill, I also create system docs for my clients. I show clients exactly how to do something. And this is a huge help. I know that these will translate, or at the very least, give me a good foundation for support materials as I'm building out a course I'm creating as well. So there's repurposing in the work that Grace is doing. And you can go back to episode 13 on repurposing to learn my philosophy on that and learn more about how to do repurposing. So along the way, I have discovered through trial and error some areas that Grace isn't so good at. And that is completely okay. She doesn't have to be the best at everything. And I just have to know to give her things that are in her wheelhouse or things that she can handle, or build in time for her to learn a new thing. And there's no reason we can't get help from other people who are experts there. With that, we have a relationship. And I've shared with Grace the vision for my company. And I did that because I want her to see that she's a part of it. It's been only 9 months of working together, and she has been raised up in hours and in pay. And I want her to know that as I grow, she will grow with me. So, another obstacle that people have is like, how will this person stay with me? And to me, it's just like any other employee relationship. She gets respect and she feels part of a team and she gets satisfaction from her job. It doesn't matter that she's on the other side of the world. And in our short time together, we have both had instances where we stuck it out. We are invested in one another. And here's the thing, I really like her. She's genuine and she has an endearing way of calling me boss. Got that, boss? So if you're feeling overwhelmed by everything that needs to be done and filling your days with tasks should be automated or outsourced, now is the time to start thinking about bringing on the help of a VA. But how? How do I find someone like you have? Someone I can trust with my business? I get it. I get that. I felt the same way. And, this is when we turn to the experts. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. I found Grace by following Jen Lehner's lead with her Front Row CEO program. And I'm going to link to it in the show notes for you. You can think of every obstacle right now as to why you shouldn't get help. I'm not making enough money. How can I afford to hire someone? It is so much work to bring someone on. Like, that was totally me. But, doing so shifted things. When you have help in your business, you're able to make more money. You free yourself up from the minutia tasks that take your time but aren't profit producing. And you're able to spend your time doing more of the work you enjoy, the work you're good at, and the work you get paid for. So I'm all about creating the life you want, and I use my platform as a business to do so. So go get some help in your business so you can grow, and get some help in figuring out the process of finding, hiring, and training your VA. You don't have to do it yourself, and there isn't one millionaire out there who has. All right, see you next week, guys. Thanks for joining me today. You can access more info in the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on iTunes and leave me a review. Until next time, keep playing the long game.